It's me, you, and everybody else. Not a light would turn on throughout the world if workers didn't get up and make it happen.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Somebody in the chat mentioned this. It would be great if we had a Labor Party, and so I wanted to ask you about that. About that proposition. Y'all have a Labor Party over there. A Labor Party that is actually, like, constituted by labor unions. Labor unions are, like, the driving force, ostensibly. Or at least a big constituent part of, like, in the, like, you know, the thing is created by unions, and there's some amount of accountability to unions that is just simply not in the Democratic Party. It's a totally different kind of organizational structure, and so y'all's Labor Party, is it really great and representative of working people and fighting on y'all's behalf in government?
If only, if only. Now it's, I always refer to it as the party formerly known as Labour. It's actually as right-wing as any Conservative government. It's led by a former public prosecutor who worked for the state, actually prosecuting people who fought back, and was a principal part of keeping Julian Assange, the brave journalist, in prison. And it now brags, believe it or not, that it raises more money from millionaires and bosses than it does from the trade union movement. Trade unions are still affiliated to it, or some, but it's very much marginalised. And what some of us now are trying to do is to actually build a new working class party, because while it was actually formed out of the trade union movement, those days now have gone. We had a chance a few years ago when we had a left-wing leader in Jeremy Corbyn, but his own members of parliament, his own officials sabotaged that, and we actually had the situation where the present leadership of, as I say, the party formerly known as Labour, preferred this right-wing Conservative government to one that might have been a little bit more left-wing. So no, we can't have any faith in the Labour Party anymore. And I think, you know, as far as I've been expelled from it, and I was expelled for liking a left-wing Facebook page. I've been 51 years a member. I've been an elected representative at every level of local authorities on behalf of that party. I donated much of my life to it, and then when this lot take power, they expel thousands and thousands of good socialists for no offence whatsoever, other than 20 years ago they might have done this, or 10 years ago they liked this Facebook page, any pretext to get rid of you. And now it's it's no different. In fact, the red Tories, we call the Conservative Party over here Tories, and these are now just a similar version to them. And I think they look like being in government next time, and it will be a disastrous right-wing government. So if you're going to create a Labour Party, make sure it sticks true to that name and truly represents the working class, because ours, I'm sad to say, no longer does.
I did not even realize that it was that bad. I knew that they kicked Jeremy Corbyn out of the party, which is just bonkers to me. And I think I've read that he has kind of been involved in talks with some other left-wing MPs to work on creating this new left-wing working class party. But I did not realize that they were going around kicking out rank and file members for ideological disagreements. I mean, that is, that's in many, many ways right now. This has not always been the case, but in many, many ways right now, the Democratic Party in the United States of America has a better claim to representing labor than the Labour Party in the UK. And I think that's a really sad state of affairs.
Yeah, we've already had one union, only a small union, but the Bakers Union actually disaffiliated. My union, Unite, which is a big trade union with over 1 million membership, has cut its donations down to the bare minimum. So, we're starting getting a little bit of a movement against what's happening. What we're up against is this Conservative government we've got have ruined working class people's life. There is a mood to get rid of them. So the party formerly known as Labour are riding that hatred of this government. And that's the only thing they're saying. We're not this lot. We're another lot that's just as bad. But that's the tragedy of what we've got. We've got no political representation at national level. And our so-called democracy is a sham, this parliamentary democracy. We have what's known, I don't know if you know much about our procedure, but every year the government sets out its intentions in, believe it or not, a king's speech. And the king drives to Parliament in a gold-encrusted coach, wearing a crown that's valued at something like £50 million, and actually says what his government, not our government, are going to do in the coming year. So that's the sham we've got. Our Parliament sits 30 weeks a year, that's all, and then they're off on holiday. And the basic salary of an MP is £84,000 a year, which is more than twice what the best paid workers, and they get around £200,000 a year in expenses. It's a lavish gravy train. So I think we've got to come up with a new form of real democracy as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. The first step, I think, is abolishing the monarchy. I think that's obviously kind of a no-brainer there.
The French knew how to do it.
Yeah, right. On top of the patent absurdity of the idea that you're ostensibly some sort of republic or democratic institution, and you've got this thing called a king. And I know that in many ways the thing does not operate as one would imagine a king does, and that the powers that the king or the queen formerly has are not really that great. But just the idea that you would have such a thing as something called a king is really wild. But then on top of that, and really the insult that is, in my view, the institution of a thing that at least presents as a monarchy, if you protest the monarchy in too mean of a way, you can actually be arrested for it.
Yeah, we had people who simply turned up to the coronation with signs that said "Not my king," and they were arrested.
And when you say that,
people started holding up blank sheets, and they were arrested as well.
And when you say that, that's all they did. They were not causing a ruckus. They came to this and stood silently. Not my king, arrested. Held a blank piece of paper, silently arrested. I mean, that's crazy. Yep.
That's how crazy the system is. And the king actually does have powers. He has the power, if he wishes, to dissolve Parliament. And way back in the 70s, the Queen actually sacked a progressive government in Australia, which is a colony, again, we've still got colonies. She actually sacked the Labour government of Gough Whitlam. So that's the power these people have got. And as well as kings and queens or whatever institution you've got throughout the world, let's not forget, we've got a ruling class as well. The big business people who, who hide the money in offshore accounts, people who don't pay taxes. They're the real rulers of our society, and I'm sure the US of A is no different to that. That the oligarchs, the Jeff Bezoses, and the oil giants and people like that are the people who really do pull the strings. Not presidents, not Congress, not Parliament over here. These people have the power to take the money out of a country if they so wish. They have the power to lay off thousands of workers, as we're seeing over here with British Steel's latest announcement. And so these are the people, we've got to recognise that we have to fight these people as well. It's not just about changing one party for another or electing a different set of people. We've got to challenge the bosses. We've got to challenge the boss class. And we do that through organising at rank and file level. And also education's important. Because most people, if I were talking to some of my neighbours like this, they wouldn't know what I was on about. The idea that we're being ruled by an elite strata of people, a tiny handful of people. People can't get their head around that when we've got so-called democracies where every few years you can go and put a cross on a piece of paper and elect somebody. And, so we have to, and again, it comes back to organising, members' education. My old union, the NUM, we had an excellent education system. We had our own trade union newspaper that went free to, it was called The Miner, went free to every member. So, we did have some semblance of being able, while we're at work, to educate our members. And, we ran courses. I was on my union's day release course. We were actually paid to go and be educated. We had week schools, month schools. I was paid to go to college for 6 weeks and study, working class history. We've got to get back to that.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about that. And I think that's a big thing that's been missing in our labor movement. I know here it's, there is a lack of appreciation for that education that's required because you have to invest in it. You have to make it a priority. You have to really do it. I mean, you can't just talk about it. You've got to really make it a priority and invest in education because it is so important to every other piece of the work. And so, yeah, I'm glad you emphasized that.
Yeah, I think it's doubly important in the situations we find ourselves in now, because it's very hard, with a fragmented trade union to get people to listen to alternative media, the spoon-fed propaganda every day. Luckily, things like this are happening. We've got a few similar and good things over here. There's some great alternate journalists that I watch from in the USA, Grey Zone, Jimmy Dore, and people like that. And we're starting to get that over here, but they're very much in minorities. And it's very difficult to challenge mainstream media when it comes at, you put your television on in the morning and you're spoon-fed propaganda from morning till night. You go and buy a newspaper and you're reading propaganda. So I think, the things we used to do, get out in streets with leaflets, with loudspeakers, getting the message across. That's, the old ways. We weren't successful in the past when we did this by accident. It's because we had that history, the great orators from over a century ago, where people in the thousands would turn up and hear because they were fighting for the right to vote and things like that. They're the shoulders of the giants that we stand on. And so we learn from history, and we cannot forget our history of struggle, and getting it across to people that we are actually the ones with the power. We wouldn't be doing this today if somebody didn't go to work and make electricity flow through power lines, if people weren't sat in places, letting Zoom, creating things like that. Wouldn't happen. They're workers. They're not great capitalists who've done these things. It's me, you, and everybody else. Not a light would turn on throughout the world if workers didn't get up and make it happen.
That's absolutely correct. And you're talking about how, used to there was a really vibrant labor press, and we've talked about that a couple of times over the last day, and in particular, I mentioned that there was the labor press was so prolific that there was an actual newspaper that was run and funded by the Knights of Labor in the late 1800s in Escambia County, Alabama. That is, I know you don't know where Escambia is in Alabama, but it is a very, very rural community on the border of Alabama and Georgia, I believe it is. And, that county doesn't even have a newspaper today, much less, right, like a labor newspaper. They don't have a newspaper. And so, how far we've fallen. And so, hopefully kind of what we're doing is a little bit in that tradition. But it really is, there's just really a dearth of information out there for people who want to know what's going on in their communities and don't want that and don't want that reality skewed by agendas or by corporate agendas, right?
Yeah, and I would also just add to that the mainstream media propaganda, it does work. Mm-hmm. They spend all this money for a reason, and they get a return on that investment, and we can see it in real time. I remember distinctly during the Bernie Sanders campaigns, and the media was clearly, not on Bernie Sanders' side, much as they were arrayed against Jeremy Corbyn. And you saw, I saw people that I was talking to that I'd have a great one-on-one conversation with them. I would have them sold, right? They were committed. They would watch CNN or MSNBC for an hour, and it was like everything we had talked about was totally undone. And it was brutal. And I think, some of that is because it's political and not as deep as labor organizing, because I there's a reason I spend more of my time doing labor organizing than political organizing, but that mainstream media really does work on folks. They invest in it for a reason, and it's powerful, and it is hard to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the biggest challenge we've got. You mentioned Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn. I remember every day of our strike, Arthur Scargill was vilified. He was the subject of the most vicious, obscene accusations Luckily, he had the strength to stand up against them, and he's still vilified to this day. And he's 85 years old. He still does the occasional speech and things like that, but he's still. He actually gets blamed, the man who closed all the mines in Britain, when in reality he was the man who was leading his members to keep them open. So we've not got to run scared when they attack us. Some great comrades of mine have always said, if they're attacking you, it's because you're doing something right. So too many people cower in front of the media. Too many leaders do and start apologising and pretend they're not what they are. Well, stand up to them. What's the worst thing that can happen? You get called a few names, but it's your members that matter. It's the working class that matters, not what the ruling class and the establishment think about you. It's our people that matter. And so we need a class of leaders. It goes back to leadership again. We need a class of leaders that aren't going to be cowed by a microphone. That don't think they've got to be nicey to these people. And we have a saying over here, calling a spade a spade. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to start using the language of our class and taking these people on. Why should Rupert Murdoch be able to decide, as a media baron, the policies of whatever party are in power over here? Why should bosses everywhere have access to Congress, to MPs over here? Why should they be giving lavish donations to these people when we want people who represent us? And as I say, in some respects, it's started. It's never been easy. It's not called the struggle for nothing. But if we carry on fighting, it's inevitable that we win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up, that if we continue, if we keep up the fight, we can win. And I think, that's, we tap into anger, we tap into hope, we tap into urgency, and we tap into, the you, that you can be part of it, and you can actually contribute and be an active agent in your own history. And knowing that history, as you spoke about, but also knowing that you can be part of that too. You are one of these workers.
We make our own history. It's not, as I say, kings and queens and rulers. And once again, I want to commend you on this great initiative. Anything I can do over here, I'll share clips from your show on all the social media that were involved in our Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign, as getting on 30,000 subscribers. The former Miners Network still exists. I'll share it around that, and we'll raise whatever we can for you blokes and this. And it's a great initiative. We've got to have more of this. And anytime you want me on, hopefully when you can see me on my own computer, which may not be the greatest sight on earth, but I'm happy to help you chaps, and you do a magnificent job. And Jacob, I really do like that cat. Well done, mate.
I like it too. Thank you. And would love to make it over there for 40th anniversary commemoration of the strike over there.
Let's talk to our wives now.
Yeah,
Go ahead and just plant the seeds now.
Talk to our wives.
Yeah. The Durham Miners Gala on July the 13th. It's the second Saturday every year. There'll be 250,000 people there celebrating our movement. Wow. It's the most vibrant day ever. It's the height of my year, and it's a tradition that goes back over 100 years. The Durham Miners Association, despite having no pits, are still functioning, still fighting. And if you can get to that gala, it's the most momentous, mind-blowing event that there is. So that's an open invite to you, if you can make it. I'd love to get over there to some of your things, but unfortunately, your government won't let me have a visa for some reason.
Oh, those damn feds.
For some reason, yeah.
I know.
It's,
well, I really appreciate the invite. You've got me fired up and wanting to be there for sure. So thank you very much for your time this morning and for your words of support. Really means a lot.
Yep.
And you, and thanks a lot. And solidarity to everybody in struggle over there.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.